Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So Arc Terminator, the same company that made the EKPS cooler, they went ahead and reached out to me and they wanted to see if I'd be interested in testing their new ground cable that they're making. It's a ground cable from the chassis to the powertrain. I said, of course I'm interested. I asked them in turn if it would be okay that if the test it went well, if I could go ahead and do a review on it. And they said, yes, no problem. So here we are. So of course, this was sent to me as a test. So I figured I might as well show you guys, give you guys a quick preview of what's going to come when they release it and how you can expect installation of this to go. Now, why would you need a ground cable? So let me tell you. So from factory, it's a braided copper cable that's not coated. It's not covered in any way. So what happens is that as you drive around over the years, that copper corrodes. It starts turning green and it starts breaking up because it's braided. So the strands start to break off and whatnot, which of course builds up resistance in the ground cable there. And over time, you end up with electrical gremlins, thinking that your sensors are off or whatnot, and it turns out to be just a ground cable. So this is actually a problem that's very common on the E chassis cars, and it started to make its way into the F chassis. So they're being proactive and trying to come up with solutions now for cars such as the F10 and give us an option. So what this is a 2-gauge welding wire that has been totally insulated. All the ends are sealed, and the terminals are also tin coated. So they're not going to corrode for probably at least the rest of the time that you have your vehicle. It should probably be good for another 25, almost 30 years, to be honest, which is a lot more that can be said for the factory ground cable. All right, so I know you guys know that on most BMWs, the ground cable in question is typically between the motor mount and the frame rail. That's been the usual spot, but to my surprise, on the F10, that is not the case. At least on the N55, it is not. Uh, the ground cable for the powertrain to the chassis is actually at the very end of the transmission, and it grounds against the transmission tunnel underneath, basically the floor pan. One thing I want to show you guys, because you're messing with the ground, you're messing with the electrical system of the entire vehicle, my recommendation is to go ahead and disconnect the battery. However, if because of time or XYZ reason, you are unable or unwilling to disconnect the battery, one thing you can do is get a set of jumper cables and just connect the ground to any good solid metal on the engine or transmission that you can reach. For me, I'm using this bolt for my oil cooler lines on the oil filter housing. And I've already tested this before and I have perfect continuity for ground. So that's a good one in my case, but you can use other stuff. That's just the easiest one to access. All right, guys, so we're under the car. It's not that easy to try to get a good image for you guys. It's pretty cramped back here, but at least I can tell you that on an F10 N55 rear-wheel drive like mine, it is very easy to get to the factory ground cable. You see there's the guibo of the transmission, and then that stud right there on the frame rail, that is the grounding point on the chassis. And then the other end of the cable goes right there, and that's just a 13mm bolt. That's a 13mm nut, so it's all very easy to access. You don't even have to remove the underbelly. Now this might differ on the all-wheel drive one, but on the rear-wheel drive, very easy. All right, guys, so here we have them side by side. So you have the factory one. You see how it's all braided. There's the braid that I was talking about earlier. You see here, for example, it's already starting to break apart. Definitely starting to break apart here. Where my finger is. Focus. There you go. And you see it's all obviously already starting to turn green. This was at one point the same color as this. So, this will still have maybe another 4 or 5 years in it, depending on how much I drive. But, for people that live up north where they use a lot of salt on the road in the winters, yeah, this will probably be gone by now. So, and here is the much improved ground cable provided by Arc Terminator. Much more solid, much sturdier, fully sealed, and it's still very flexible. You see that I can still move it around however I want. You see how Arc Terminator's cable has all this extra sheathing on this end. This is the end that goes against the transmission. Now remember, at the back of the transmission, you have the drive shaft and the guibo right there. So what this is doing is basically keeping the cable on a straight line until it gets past the guibo, Then you can make your turn to go to the grounding point on the floor pan. That way it's nice and safe from the spinning object right next to it. The factory did the same thing with this extra sheathing here. So, it's the same idea. We're just going a little more overkill with it to be safer. Well, there it is, guys. So you see it's very easy to install. It's just those two, a nut here and a bolt and nut on that side. It's a little tight to get to the one up there, but honestly, like if you have good dexterity, you should have no problem. If you don't have good dexterity, I do recommend then to go ahead and remove just this. You don't even have to remove it, just loosen this so you can get your hand in there. Because you can access some of it from the other side of this support bracket if you have to. I was able to do it all one-handed, so it's not that difficult. So there you have it. That's probably one of the easiest installs that I've ever done on this car. And it's not all about making power. Sometimes you have to do some stuff for the reliability and long-term drivability of the vehicle. And this is certainly one of them. And it was so easy to do. So I highly recommend it. I recommend you also follow Arc Terminator on Instagram or go to their website. This cable is still on the R&D phase, but they are almost done with it. So expect it to be released soon. So go ahead and give them a follow. I hope you guys liked this. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. Like I always say, I got more projects coming your way. Thank you.